30 years to fix, and it's still going on right now, and $1 billion taking that from our
Okay, well, maybe I have.
And then, so right now, Shell and Arctic barges are labeled as offshore drilling mobile vessels. And so this greatly increases the opportunity for oil spills because these mobile vessels have a much lower standard than stationary vessels. And so therefore, they're more likely to induce oil spills, especially in the harsh weather and the ice in the Arctic, which leads to very brittle. And then, so without the oil response team, the reporting structure, so if you guys are 2015, there'll be some oil spill. And so this leads to the probability of greater oil data. That's very nice. So anyway, third reason is human rights abuses. So Shell Oil Company has a precedent of human rights abuses, especially in the Niger Delta, Ecuador, and the Middle East. So, for example, the Daeny people of the Niger Delta were forced into slavery and near extinction. So, supporting Shell is supporting their inhuman ways and a sign of our acceptance of their methods. And so, destroying their environment could lead to the point where they can't even drink water because it's contaminated with cancerous substances. And so this is an example of history repeating itself. As a couple of years ago in the Niger Delta, when the Daeny people were forced into near extinction, we are viewing a similar situation now with the Inupiat villagers and.
Okay, guys, this. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I like that. So for example, I can check to see her answer, and like here, exactly. Okay, wait, all of you guys, pull up this desk. Anywhere, everywhere, somewhere.
I can move this. Sorry. Okay. Do you want to sit there or do you want to sit here? You can sit here. It's better. Okay.
Okay, I'll
Daeny, wait up.
Yeah, 1 second. And then after I do this, I can always edit the question too and say, okay, this question is more than that.
Cool, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's going to be pretty bad. You can bring it up, it's your speech. I'll just have Carolyn do this.
Wait, Daeny, you need to tagline really, really well.
Alright. And can you also briefly say what their 3 points were and like just in the tagline? Alright. Okay. So, so I think that she's going to kill me.
You can single-handedly
And it's so bad. It could be really bad. Okay.
Alright, so before you start trying to just say everything.
Alright. Okay, guys, so there are 3 main points for the affirmative team. The first one is about the 7,500 indigenous villagers. The second one is how Shell is not ready to drill yet. And the third one is of human rights abuses.
Spread it out some so there's space in between so she has room to say stuff about it.
This is like, the speech is kind of flowing. Sorry.
Daeny,
I'm sorry.
speak so they can understand you.
Okay.
Is everyone good? Have that
Outline of her first speech written.
Yeah.
Okay, Daeny, make sure you
I'm doing a counter plan. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lily.
Okay. It's fine. Just show where you are.
Okay.
It's okay.
Alright. As the leader of the negation team, I strongly negate today's resolution that the USFG should ban Shell Oil Company from drilling in the Arctic. Okay, as a brief roadmap, I'm first going to go through the negation team's case, then move on to address the affirmative team's case. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about the disadvantage to the affirmative team's plan, which I'm going to tagline economy. Alright, so drilling in the Arctic the reason why Shell wants to drill in the Arctic is for monetary gain, so that we can improve our, which is essentially an economic advantage. Now, what the affirmative team's plan today is going to be banning Shell from drilling oil in the Arctic, which means that we're going to lose the potential money that we could have gained from this. So that means that we're going to lose this money, and we're not going to have this money to pump back into our economy. Okay, however, I'm going to address my counterplan really quickly. Okay, so, counterplan.
Write it as a point.
The actor is the U.S. federal government, time frame as soon as possible, funding through normal ways and means, and the plan text is that the USFG is going to ban Shell oil from drilling in the Arctic, but instead we're going to allow Shell oil to drill in Texas. Okay, so let's go back and look at this in our first disadvantage to the affirmative team's plan, economy. So, the potential for Texas, it has the potential for 1.1 million barrels of oil. So that means there's about $22 billion that it could bring to our economy. So the affirmative team, by banning Shell oil from drilling in the Arctic, but they cannot say that they're also going to allow Shell to drill in Texas too, because that would be unfair. So they are also not going to be able to have this $22 billion that the negation team is essentially putting forward in today's round. So the impacts of that is that the negation team gets $22 billion, and that means that we can pump that back into the economy. I really don't know the impacts for that, Lily, I'm sorry. Okay, this is really sad. Okay. Moving on to address the second, this is a better advantage. Is the advantage to the negation team's counterplan. And we're going to tagline this Texas education. So, last year, oil companies managed to raise $1.26 billion to support public education. So that means that they either donated it directly to the public school system, or they were taxed. They were taxed, and that went to the public school system. So, public school systems are generally overcrowded and underfunded, and Texas is an example of that. So by passing the negation team's plan, by having Texas drill for oil, Shell drill for oil in Texas, we're going to be able to get money to support Texas education. And the impacts to that are that we're going to be able to provide a better education for children in Texas, which has several more impacts by itself. These children can get better jobs, which means that they can support themselves and their families, which means that they don't the cycle of poverty, which essentially means that if you don't have enough money, you may have to drop out of school, and then you won't be able to get a better job, because higher paying jobs usually require better degrees. Okay. Okay. This is gross. Moving on to address the affirmative team's case. So their first contention is of the 7,500 indigenous villagers. Okay, so here the affirmative team is basically saying that we're going to lose this whole culture if we allow Shell to drill in the Arctic. Now, so the negation team actually doesn't link into this at all, because we are still banning oil drilling in the Arctic. Moving on to address their second contention, which is about how Shell is currently not ready to drill in the Arctic. So the affirmative team has mentioned that there are increased chances of oil spills. However, even if you don't buy that the negation team also doesn't link into this, because once again we're not drilling in the Arctic, then well, Shell isn't being allowed to drill right now. Because they actually don't have the safety equipment, because they're not ready, the government has actually prohibited them from drilling in the Arctic right now. So, once again, this contention is kind of irrelevant. Moving on to address their third contention, which is of human rights abuses. So they brought up a lot of examples from Ecuador and from the Middle East. This is going to sound really bad, Lily, but the reason why this happens is because of a lot of systematic problems. One, the government is corrupt. Two, the people really don't have a lot of power to speak out against companies, giant corporations like Shell, that are essentially causing these human rights abuses to happen. They really don't have any power. They really cannot do anything about it. However, in America, it's completely opposite here. The government is actually willing to listen to the people, and the people are very willing to stand up for anything that they see is wrong. Yeah, also which once again, which means that once again the negation team doesn't link into this because we're banning oil drilling in the Arctic. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. And so for these reasons, I strongly negate today's resolution that the USFG should ban Shell Oil Company from drilling in the Arctic.
How long was that?
608. Oh, criterion and benefits.
How are you guys doing flow-wise? What's happening?
Oh, by the way, okay. Criterion, which is Daeny didn't set up the criterion during her speech, but our criterion today is going to be of net benefits, because that's what Daeny just said. Like, okay, and the criterion is what.
not say that?
No, Ariel didn't say that. And then criterion is what the debate should be weighed on. So net benefits is the most benefits from whichever plan or whichever case. Okay.
I have to go over all the responses, but then
Sabrine!
so I might have to check.
Shush!
So,
I used to watch this one because I need to use my phone for my.
Hi, Sabrine. Okay, so now you guys are into the next call. Pearl, tell us where you're going and when.
Is everybody ready? Alright. Time starts now. As the second speaker of the affirmative team, I strongly affirm today's resolution that, the U.S. federal government should ban Shell Oil Company from drilling in the Arctic. So as a brief roadmap, I'll be going over the negation team's case before moving on to our own case. So their first contention was that of their. First, I'll address their counterclaim, then I'll move on to their case. So their counterclaim was that instead of drilling in the Arctic, the U.S. federal government should drill in Texas instead. And they provided lots of reasons as to how this is beneficial. Their first advantage was that of the economy. They talked about all the economic benefits to drilling in Texas rather than the Arctic. However, if you buy their econ disadvantage, you shouldn't weigh this in the debate because there's still going to be lots of human rights abuses, which they mention in a very controversial way in their speech. But I'll be going over that when I address our case. But basically, they talked about education and how the economy would thus benefit Texas education because of all the money that is raised or that is made from the Texas from drilling in Texas. However, the money made from drilling in Texas may not necessarily go into the education system. There have been many instances in America in which we've made a substantial amount of money. However, most of it, or not a lot of it, has gone into public school education. And if the negation team comes up and decides to say, oh well, we can change that. Well, no, because that isn't in their counter. That is not addressed in their counterclaim. Therefore, they can't address it in their speeches. They also talked about how this would reverse the cycle of poverty because there'd be more jobs. I'd like to talk about how Shell Corporation or Shell Oil Company is extremely notorious for all their human rights abuses. Therefore, by drilling in Texas, it's not any better. They could be abusing their workers in America. They could be taking advantage of people such as undocumented workers or immigrants and have them go to and pay them extremely low wages with extremely poor working conditions and make them so that they can benefit the most by having the most workers. However, this isn't beneficial at all because people are getting bad wages, poor wages, poor working conditions, and overall a lower quality of life. And this doesn't benefit Texas education at all because if people are making less money, they're not capable of sending their kids to school because they have to support their kids. However, if they can't support their kids can't go to public school because their kids will have to work to support their own families themselves. The cycle of poverty keeps going over and over again. The cycle of poverty will continue to roll. And even if Shell Corporation drills in Texas, there are no benefits to this. Moving on to our own case. So our first contention is that of how drilling in Shell Oil Company would affect the 700 would affect the indigenous villages in the Arctic. And they stated that
with their counterplan, they would drill in Texas instead of the Arctic. Therefore, there'd be there's no link. However, their case still provides a lot of human rights abuses, which I will go over in my third contention. However, and even so, drilling in the Arctic would provide a lot of detriments because drilling for data and numbers, rather because they're frightening off wildlife. When they're drilling in the Arctic, and also drilling in the Arctic could lead to the extinction of an entire cultural group. What are the impacts of this? The impact of an entire loss of a population in the Arctic as a direct result of the drilling in the Arctic. Moving on to our second contention of Shell's Arctic not ready for the oil spill response, and we talked about how there was an increased chance of oil spill, and the negation team also refuted this by saying that there was no link because they were going to be drilling in Texas. However, I'd like to refute this by stating if they don't have technology ready for the Arctic, how do you expect them to have better technology for Texas? Because there have been instances where their technology has where the Arctic's technology or Shell's technology has not been suitable for the Arctic. In which I'll take your question later if I have time. Thank you. In which when one of their rigs broke and set on fire, and they didn't have an oil response team and a weak barge structure, which led to a huge chance of an oil spill in the Arctic. And the Arctic is an undocked, or is an area that we still need to provide a lot of research for. If Shell Corporation does not have the proper technology for sustaining oil drilling in the Arctic, how do you expect them to do any better in that in Texas? Moving on to our final contention today of human rights abuses. And they talked about how in these countries there are corrupt governments, people have less power, and they talked about how in America they have more say in the government. I'd like to review this by saying that people in America a lot of people in America don't have a huge say in the government. This is a weak statement, and in generalizing the fact that people in America are capable because are able to stand up against issues they see in their country, because there are many issues prominent in America today that still haven't been solved, though there have been lots of movements and lives lost against these issues. For example, racism. Racism was a huge problem, and is currently a still ongoing problem. Though the government has passed many laws against racism, and though people have protested many times about racism, it's still prominent in America today. Therefore, they can't say that people in America would do any better protesting against the human rights abuses than in a third world country. And because we value the environment, because we're protecting the lives of innocent people, you should outweigh this over their one contention on the economy. And for these reasons, I strongly affirm today's resolution.
Carolyn, it's so hard to take pictures of you because you're moving everywhere.
Don't take pictures of me, man.
Yeah, don't take pictures of me. This is really bad.
I'm like,
Is that one so good flowing?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll probably be the slowest speaker, so it's gonna be easy for you guys. Hopefully.
Tagline.
Everything. Oh, for the refutation.
For everything.
Okay.
Know where to go.
So for their refutation to our first contention, was that we had the potential for 1.14 billion barrels of oil by going with our plan, and they reviewed this by saying how that there's still going to be human rights abuses in Texas, or like just still human rights abuses even if we go with our plan. And our second contention was that of Texas education, how we can use the money that we gained from the oil, the drilling, how we can put that into Texas education. They reviewed this by saying that the money may not go into the education system. So yeah. Now, their refutation to our refutation to their first contention was that there are still going to be human rights abuses. Their refutation to their second contention was that how
Carolyn, what are you doing?
Anna, on this. Let's see.
Reputation to the second one? Carolyn, why are you just saying them?
I already wait. You said go over them before I stop.
No.
Oh,
wait,
timeline.
started
No, I thought you told me to repeat them.
No, Carolyn, you just weren't refuting anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you
No.
see their point?
No, I thought she was gonna say everything then refute. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting.
No, I thought you said to repeat.
No. Just tagline where you are
Oh.
as you go.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Start time over.
You need to lower your use of jargon. Sometimes people are just
Tagline.
Well,
I mean, you see what just
okay.
Whatever. Simple.
I don't run that down. Okay, time starts now. We strongly negate the resolution that the USFG should ban Shell oil companies from drilling in the Arctic. So for a roadmap, we'll start by refuting their reputations to our reputations, their reputations to our. Okay, I'll be going over their case first, then moving on to Arctic. Okay, so our refutation to the refutation of how there's still human rights abuses is that our point was that by implementing our counterplan, the Arctic indigenous villages would not be affected. But they keep on bringing up how there's still going to be human rights abuses, but they haven't. The affirmative team has failed to provide a number or proof of the human rights abuses. Okay, now refuting their refutation. Okay, their next refutation was that how Shell is not ready. They just basically restated how Shell is not ready to drill in the Arctic, and we refute this by saying that they're currently drilling in the Arctic is already prohibited by the government. And they also stated that there was a lot of technology failures, but they have failed to give any example of these technologies.
Are you aware that for your reputation against our human rights evidence thing, we did say that people like the Daeny were forced to slavery and near extinction?
Yeah. Okay, now their third point was that there's still going to be human rights abuses, and that also people can't always stand up for themselves, stand up and voice their opinions in America. And they give the example of racism, how racism cannot be solved by government laws. It's a mindset, not a law on. So that all of their points stand refuted. Now, in refutation to their refutations to our points, our first point was that we had the potential for 1.14 million barrels of oil, and they refuted this by saying that there would still be human rights abuses even if we have this potential for so much money. And they just stated that, but we refuted that earlier on. Our second point was that how we could use this money that we gained from the oil drilling to put into Texas education, like their public school programs. And they refuted this by saying that money would not always go to the public school system. However, this has already happened. Money has already gone from the drilling, oil drilling to the public school systems. So right now, all we are doing with our plan is just continuing this thing. Okay. Yes.
Are you aware that in the status quo right now, even with the public school funding from oil drilling, there's still a lot that money that public schools need, which you stated in your first sentence?
Yeah, but we're providing some help, and some help is better than no help at all. And with this money, that's very Our third point was how we have potential for 1.14 billion barrels of oil and 5 drilling in Texas, and with 1.14 million barrels of oil, there would be a $22 billion profit, and it's completely, if you expand oil drilling in the Arctic, then you won't get this money. So, and our second point is that of Texas education, and with the money that we get from the drilling, we can put this money back into policies to boost their education, which is generally underfunded, and by doing improving education programs, we can help these students get a job, and then later on in life they'll contribute back to our economy. So for all of these things,
Okay. I think my vote is actually going to be no.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You want to do two?
This is my head. Oh, wait, was that done? Sorry. Okay. As the leader of the Nation team, I strongly negate today's resolution that the USFG should ban the Shell Oil Company from drilling in the Arctic. As a brief roadmap, I'm first going to address the affirmative team's case, and I'm going to go on to a two-world analysis. All right. So, even if you don't buy that the negation team doesn't link into any of the affirmative team's contentions, I'm going to go through all of their points and explain why we still win all of them. Okay. So, their first contention, which is about the indigenous villages. All right. So all they ever said to the refutation in the first negation speech was this really vague statement about how there's still going to be human rights abuses. Okay. So basically, they've just conceded that we don't link in, and so that means that the negation team essentially wins this point because we don't link in, which means that these impacts don't really go under the negation team. You can't say the negation team causes these particular impacts. Moving on to address their second contention, which is about how Shell isn't ready. Okay. Once again, in the status quo, Shell is not being allowed to drill in the Arctic until they have the equipment necessary to make sure that there aren't any oil spills, to make sure that it's completely safe to drill in the Arctic. Okay. The affirmative team, once again, is really vague statement about there still have been instances in which technology has failed. Okay, so moving on to address their third contention, which is about human rights abuses. All right, so undoubtedly America does have problems, but people are trying to take steps to solve them. Even if you take this example that the affirmative team brought up, which is racism, we are still trying to take steps towards solving it. Even though it is a mindset, and it can't necessarily be solved just by government legislation, you can see in legislation there are steps that we're taking. For example, trying to put body cameras on policemen, or trying to retrain them, etc., etc. So I'm going to move on to address the two-world analysis. So basically a two-world analysis is kind of like a collection and comparison of the impacts between the two different teams. All right, so today the affirmative team has no economic benefit at all. They're not drilling anywhere in the world, anywhere in America specifically. Okay. And second of all, they really don't have, as I've gone through their whole case, they don't have access to any of their impacts under any of their points, whether it be the loss of a huge culture with their first contention, or vague safety concerns with their second contention, or even their human rights abuses point. So they don't have any of that. What we see today is that they don't really have any of these impacts. So, however, if you look at the negation team, we do have the economic benefit from drilling in Texas, which means that we can help stop the cycle of poverty, pull people out of this cycle. And second of all, we do have access to the Texas education because okay, so which means that we do have access to this education for children in Texas, which means that we're going to help solve this problem of underfunding within the Texas public school system. Okay. So we have that benefit, we have the economic benefit, and wow, that's really bad. Okay. Makes me better. It's better when you have a button on your side. Okay. So as you can see here, education has a lot of impacts within itself. It means that people are able to get higher paying jobs, which means that they can support their families, and that means that their children can go on and have a better quality of life overall. And so today that appeals to net benefits, which is our criterion. And net benefits is essentially the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. And so don't let the affirmative team come up here and say, yeah, well, we have access to all of our impacts still, because I've clearly gone through their case, shown you why they don't have access to these impacts at all, why it doesn't affect the negation team at all, and how we still do actually have these two impacts, the main two impacts today, of economic benefits and the Texan education. And so for these reasons, I strongly negate today's resolution that the USFG should ban the Shell Oil Company from drilling the Arctic. Ban.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And as the leader, or as the final speaker of the affirmative team, I strongly affirm today's resolution that the U.S. federal government should ban Shell Oil Company from drilling in the Arctic for these very reasons. So, as this is my final speech, I'll be going over voter issues, which are reasons as to why the affirmative team has clearly provided 1, more impacts, 2, more benefits, and 3, has collapsed the case of the negation team. Therefore, which is why we have basically won. So our first voter issue today is that of the criteria, net benefits. So we have provided more benefits from not drilling in the Arctic. For one, human rights would be protected. I know that the negation team stated that our first contention about the indigenous cultures their counterpart is not directly linked in, therefore it does not stand. However, if you don't buy this, you should still buy the fact that there's still going to be human rights.
Never mind.
There are still going to be human rights abuses if Shell Oil Corporation starts drilling in Texas. There will be low wages and there could be low wages and poor working conditions and worker abuse for those who are maybe people such as undocumented workers, immigrants, people of the lower class, etc. The negation team completely dropped this, meaning that they concede that there will still be human rights abuses. Therefore, there's still going to be. Therefore, by talking about indigenous, therefore we still win on the human rights point. Also, if you don't buy this, you should buy our environment contention. Even if we spoke about how drilling in the Arctic would hurt the environment. Even if you don't buy the fact that that the negation team's counterclaim doesn't link into the Arctic, therefore this shouldn't stand in the flow. You should still buy the fact that there are going to be environmental detriments if there's prolonged drilling in Texas. There's still going to be environmental detriments. This hurts the environment. Which leads me to our second voter issue today, that of magnitude. Human rights and the environment should be valued over the economy, because there are many other ways to better the economy, which I won't go over, because I'm sure the judge and all of you in the audience can clearly think of many better ways to improve the economy. We should be valuing the rights of human lives, and also the environment, which is the world we live in right now. If we don't protect the environment, if we don't take it into consideration the things in it and the people in it, then there's no point of having an economy in the first place. That being said, I'll be going over two world comparison, their world versus our world. So in the negation team's case, they have two contentions, one of the economic benefit and two of education. I'll be going, since I already collapsed their economy contention by saying that that human rights and the environment outweighs the economy because there would be no economy without humans and without the environment in the first place. Their economy contention doesn't stand. Their second contention was that of education. They completely dropped my statement when I talked about how oil companies would have human rights abuses, which would therefore lead into the cycle of poverty. Because I talked about how it wouldn't move into how the money made would not directly go into public school education. As in the status quo today, the sub money that the oil companies are making for the government are clearly not enough for public schools. Which I stated in the question, which the second next speaker stated, some help is better than no help. Well, like I stated, this some help is clearly not enough. So drilling in Texas would not have a clear benefit at all to the education of Texas. So their education point doesn't stand. Also, it would just being their counterplan would just also add into the cycle of poverty, like I stated in my speech, because their children would be forced to work their parents would have to work with poor living conditions and low wages, leading into the cycle of poverty. And because you should value the environment and human lives over the money, I strongly affirm today's resolution. I didn't have environment. I just said it. I meant to say environment, but
What did you guys think?
that's not.
Opinions?
I shouldn't have said environment.
Knocking is kind of like clapping in Pearlin. So like after a speech, like reading, you knock it just to like kind of acknowledge the speaker, but less loudly than clapping. You can also do it during your partner's speech if you like read something and want to emphasize it. Stand up and try to ask a question. They don't like to acknowledge you. So the thing is, if you ask a question, you have to stand there until they acknowledge you, or you can like say, excuse me, if it's like a minute and they haven't acknowledged you. They can either ask you to sit down if they don't want to take the question right now. They can ask you to wait to the end, or they can accept your question. But you have to wait.
Also, it looks really bad if you don't answer any questions.
Yeah. So answering at least one question is good.
Yeah, I like that benefits of like environment and human rights.
Yeah.
I did. I even have blog prep. Blog prep for environment.
Okay. So the thing is, you don't want to bring up
I don't know what
the last two speeches, like the voter
Invite
speeches,
us,
right? Once you're into the second next speech, sounds like speech. If you start bringing up new arguments at that point, it's very easy for Apple that that's unfair. Because once you get to those last two next speeches, you know where to go. Apple has 5 minutes to respond to all of them. So if you bring up new points, it's really easy for Apple to argue and say that's unfair. And the judges like to buy it because it's kind of unfair. 12 minutes versus 5 minutes. So I wouldn't suggest bringing up new arguments on day. After the first speech, you can bring up new evidence still in all the first 4 speeches. And then after that, you can't bring up new stuff.
Okay, wait, Lily. In my defense, I didn't know what Ariel was saying in her first speech. I just read what was on her, or what was on her first speech. Well, yeah, she didn't read some stuff. I just asked Daeny, she didn't read some stuff. So I thought she was.
I haven't had my first intention. Yes. I am. You can do better. Yeah. That was okay.
Do you guys have any feedback for them? Or things like you thought they did well, or things you thought they could change and do better? It's okay.
What about like speaking style? Like, what did you like about how Daeny and Carolyn?
Well, it was a lot slower I mean, don't get me wrong. He speaks like